Most people are not destroyed by life. They are destroyed by their reactions to life. One comment ruins their mood. One rejection destroys their confidence. One difficult moment makes them lose control. And they repeat this cycle for years without realizing something dangerous. Every emotional reaction gives your power away. The people who win in life are not always smarter. They are calmer, more disciplined, more emotionally controlled. In this audiobook, you will learn how to stop reacting emotionally, protect your peace, control your mind, and become mentally untouchable in a world designed to trigger you. Because the moment you control your reactions, you finally control your life. Chapter 1. Your reactions are controlling your life. Most people think their biggest problem is stress, or toxic people, or bad luck. But the truth is much deeper than that. Your biggest problem is not always what happens to you. It's how you react to what happens to you. Because two people can experience the exact same situation, and one becomes stronger while the other becomes emotionally destroyed. One person gets rejected and uses it as motivation. Another person gets rejected and loses confidence for months. One person gets criticized and improves themselves. Another person gets angry, defensive, emotional, and unstable. The situation is not what creates suffering most of the time. The reaction does. And that is why emotional control is one of the most important skills you will ever develop. Because if people can control your emotions, they control your life. Read that again carefully. If people can control your emotions, they control your life. The moment somebody can make you angry whenever they want, distract you whenever they want, upset you whenever they want, they own your attention, and attention is power. Most people never realize how much energy they waste reacting emotionally every single day. They react to comments online. They react to criticism. They react to being ignored. They react to delays. They react to rejection. They react to things that will not even matter next week. And slowly, their mind becomes exhausted. Because emotional reactions drain mental energy. Every unnecessary argument drains you. Every emotional outburst drains you. Every hour spent overthinking drains you. That energy could have been used to improve your life, to build discipline, to focus on goals, to create something meaningful. But instead, it gets wasted on emotional chaos. This is why calm people often become successful. Not because they feel less emotion, but because they control emotion better. Power is calm. Weakness is reactive. The strongest people are usually not the loudest people. They are the people who remain emotionally stable under pressure. The people who think before speaking. The people who refuse to let temporary emotions control permanent decisions. Because they understand something most people never learn. A moment of emotional weakness can destroy years of progress. One angry reaction can ruin a relationship. One emotional decision can destroy an opportunity. One moment of lost control can damage your reputation permanently. That is why discipline matters. Not just physical discipline, emotional discipline, mental discipline. The ability to stay composed when life becomes uncomfortable. And understand this clearly. Life will always test you emotionally. People will disrespect you. People will misunderstand you. People will disappoint you. Stress will appear. Pressure will appear. Chaos will appear. That part never ends. The real question is, can you remain calm anyway? Can you control yourself anyway? Because emotionally reactive people live in survival mode. everything affects them. Every opinion changes their mood. Every inconvenience ruins their day. Every disagreement becomes emotional. They live without inner control. And without inner control, there is no peace. This is why emotionally disciplined people feel different. They move differently. They speak differently. They think differently. They are not easily shaken because they train themselves not to react impulsively to everything around them. And that training changes everything. Because when you stop reacting emotionally, you start seeing clearly. You stop making impulsive decisions. You stop feeding unnecessary drama. You stop giving toxic people power over your mind. You become harder to manipulate. And in today's world, that is a superpower. Because modern life is built around stealing your attention and triggering your emotions. Social media profits from emotional reactions. News profits from fear. Toxic people profit from your anger. Weak people provoke reactions because reactions give them attention. But disciplined people understand something important. Not everything deserves a reaction. Sometimes silence is power. Sometimes walking away is power. Sometimes staying calm is power. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Because emotional maturity is not about winning every argument. It is about protecting your peace. Most arguments are useless. Most drama is temporary. Most emotional reactions solve nothing. But they do drain your energy. And energy is limited. That is why mentally strong people guard their minds carefully. They do not argue with everyone. They do not explain themselves constantly. They do not react impulsively. They observe more. They speak less. They stay focused. Because they understand this truth. Every reaction is a choice, and every choice shapes your future. So, if your life currently feels emotionally chaotic, ask yourself honestly, how much of your suffering is being created by your own reactions? How many problems became worse because you reacted emotionally instead of intelligently? How much peace have you sacrificed trying to prove yourself to people who never cared? These questions matter. Because self-awareness is the beginning of emotional control. And emotional control is the beginning of real strength. Not fake strength. Not loud strength. Real strength. The ability to remain calm while life tests you. The ability to think clearly under pressure. The ability to control yourself even when emotions rise inside you. That is rare. And rare qualities create powerful people. So starting today, watch your reactions carefully. Notice what triggers you. Notice what steals your peace. Notice what controls your emotions. Because the goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to stop being controlled by emotions. There's a difference. Emotion is human, but emotional slavery is weakness. And the moment you learn to pause before reacting, you begin taking your power back, little by little, decision by decision, reaction by reaction, until one day, the things that once controlled you no longer have power over your mind. That is emotional discipline. That is mental toughness. And that is where your transformation begins. Chapter 2. Stop giving everyone access to your mind. One of the most dangerous habits in modern life is giving everyone access to your mind. Everyone. Strangers on the internet. Negative people. Toxic friends. Random opinions. People who do not even care about your future. And without realizing it, you allow their words, behavior, and energy to control your emotions daily. That is emotional weakness. Because the moment everybody can affect your mental state, you lose inner control. Mentally strong people understand something that emotionally reactive people never fully learn. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Not everyone deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves your energy. That lesson alone can change your life. Because most emotional suffering comes from caring too much about people who contribute nothing meaningful to your growth. People destroy their peace trying to explain themselves, trying to defend themselves, trying to prove themselves, trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding them. And the worst part? Most of those people will forget the argument tomorrow. But your energy remains drained. Your focus remains damaged. Your peace remains disturbed. That is why emotionally disciplined people become selective with their attention. They understand attention is valuable. Where attention goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, your life follows. So if your attention is constantly trapped in drama, negativity, and emotional chaos, your life will slowly become chaotic too. This is why you must stop reacting to every opinion, especially in a world addicted to validation. Today, people measure their worth through likes, comments, attention, and approval. One compliment makes them feel powerful. One criticism destroys their confidence. That is emotional dependency. And emotional dependency creates weak minds. Because when your confidence depends on outside approval, you become easy to manipulate. People can control your mood simply by accepting or rejecting you. That is not freedom. That is emotional slavery. The need for validation destroys inner peace. Read that again. The need for validation destroys inner peace because you start performing instead of living authentically. You stop asking, "What do I truly want?" and start asking, "What will make people approve of me?" That mindset quietly destroys confidence, because confidence cannot survive if your identity depends on constant external approval. Real confidence is internal. It is built through discipline, through self-respect, through keeping promises to yourself, through emotional control, not applause, not attention, not temporary validation from strangers. And this is why emotionally strong people often appear quieter. Not because they are weak, but because they no longer feel the need to react to everything. They no longer need to prove themselves constantly. Silence becomes their protection, because silence protects energy. Emotionally reactive people explain too much, argue too much, defend themselves too much. But calm people understand. People see what they want to see. You cannot control every opinion people have about you, and trying to control their perception will emotionally exhaust you. So stop chasing universal approval. It does not exist. No matter how good you are, someone will criticize you. No matter how disciplined you become, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how kind you are, someone will dislike you. That is life. And emotional maturity begins when you accept that reality. Because once you stop needing everyone's approval, you become emotionally free. Now understand something important. Detachment is not coldness. Detachment is control. Many people misunderstand emotional detachment. They think emotionally disciplined people do not care. That is false. They care deeply. But they do not allow emotions to control their behavior. There is a difference. Weak people react emotionally first and think later. Strong people observe first and respond intentionally. Detach emotionally. Observe logically. That mindset changes everything, because emotional detachment gives you clarity. When emotions control your thinking, you make impulsive decisions. You overreact. You overthink. You speak emotionally. You regret actions later. But when you create emotional distance, your mind becomes clearer. You begin seeing situations objectively instead of emotionally. And and clarity is power. That is why calm people make better decisions under pressure. They are not blinded by temporary emotion. They pause, they analyze, they think, then they act. That is discipline, and discipline protects peace. Most emotional pain becomes worse because people react too quickly. Someone ignores them. They panic emotionally. Someone criticizes them. They become defensive immediately. Something stressful happens. They assume the worst instantly. But emotionally disciplined people slow everything down. They understand this truth. Temporary emotions create permanent mistakes, so they pause before reacting, always. Because one emotional moment can destroy years of progress. One emotional text message, one angry outburst, one impulsive decision. That is all it takes sometimes. This is why mentally strong people train themselves daily, not physically, mentally. They train patience. They train silence. They train emotional control, because they know the world constantly tests emotional discipline, especially today. Modern life is engineered to trigger reactions. Social media rewards outrage. News rewards fear. Algorithms reward emotional behavior. Everyone wants your attention. Everyone wants your reaction. Because emotional people are easier to control. But calm people become difficult to manipulate. That is why emotional control is power. And the strongest thing you can do sometimes is refuse to react. Not because you are scared, not because you are weak, but because your peace matters more than temporary emotional satisfaction. Never forget that. Some battles are not worth your energy. Some arguments are distractions. Some people enjoy provoking emotional reactions because chaos is the only power they have. Do not feed that energy. Protect your mind. Protect your peace. Protect your focus. Because your future depends on where your mental energy goes every single day. And from this moment forward, stop giving everyone unlimited access to your emotions. Not everyone deserves your reaction. Not everyone deserves your attention. And not everyone deserves access to your peace. Chapter 3. Train yourself to stay calm under pressure. Anyone can stay calm when life is easy. Anyone can feel confident when everything is working out. Anyone can appear emotionally strong when there is no pressure. But pressure reveals the truth. Pressure exposes emotional weakness. Pressure exposes mental habits. Pressure exposes who has discipline and who only pretends to have discipline. That is why difficult moments are important. Because difficult moments reveal your true level of emotional control. When stress appears, who do you become? When life becomes unfair, who do you become? When people disrespect you, who do you become? These moments matter. Because emotionally reactive people collapse under pressure. They panic, they overthink, they speak emotionally, they make impulsive decisions, they lose control over themselves, and then later, they regret everything. That is the danger of emotional impulsiveness. Temporary emotions create permanent consequences. One angry reaction can ruin trust. One emotional decision can destroy opportunities. One moment of lost control can create years of regret. That is why calmness is not weakness. Calmness is power. Read that carefully. Calmness is power. The ability to stay composed while life becomes chaotic is one of the rarest skills in the modern world, because most people are controlled by their emotions. They react instantly. They feel something and immediately obey the feeling. That is weakness. Mentally strong people operate differently. They feel emotions too, but they do not become servants to emotions. They pause first, always. Pause first, react later. That habit alone can save your life from countless mistakes, Because emotions rise quickly. Anger rises quickly. Fear rises quickly. Frustration rises quickly. But disciplined people understand something important. Not every emotion deserves action. Just because you feel angry does not mean you should speak. Just because you feel offended does not mean you should react. Just because you feel pressure does not mean you should panic. Emotions are temporary, but decisions have consequences. That is why mentally disciplined people slow themselves down under pressure. They breathe, they observe, they think carefully before responding, because they know emotional reactions often create bigger problems than the original situation itself. Look at most conflicts in life. Most problems become worse because somebody reacted emotionally instead of intelligently. Arguments escalate emotionally. Relationships collapse emotionally. Opportunities disappear emotionally. All because people never learned how to remain calm under pressure. But calmness is trainable. Nobody is born emotionally disciplined. It is practiced daily, moment by moment, reaction by reaction. The strongest people in the world train their minds constantly. Athletes train under pressure. Soldiers train under pressure. Leaders train under pressure. Why? Because pressure changes people. And if you are not mentally prepared, pressure will control you. That is why emotional control must become part of your identity, not something you practice occasionally, something you live by, because life will continue testing you. Unexpected problems will happen. People will disappoint you. Stress will appear suddenly. Chaos will arrive without warning. And in those moments, your emotional habits will decide your future. Not motivation, not inspiration. Habits. This is why mentally strong people value routines that strengthen the mind. Silence, reflection, exercise, discipline, stillness. These habits train emotional stability, because a distracted mind becomes emotionally weak, but a disciplined mind becomes calm under pressure. And understand this clearly. Silence is psychological power. Emotionally reactive people talk too much during emotional moments. They try to prove themselves immediately, defend themselves immediately, win arguments immediately. But emotionally strong people understand silence creates control. Silence gives you time to think. Silence prevents emotional mistakes. Silence protects energy. And silence often confuses emotional people. Because emotional people expect emotional reactions. When you stay calm, you remove their power. That is why the calmest person in the room usually has the most power. Not because they are emotionless, but because they control themselves. Control is power. Most people lose battles emotionally before life even defeats them physically. Fear defeats them. Stress defeats them. Overthinking defeats them. Not reality, their own uncontrolled mind. That is why emotional mastery matters so much. Because your external life will never become peaceful if your internal world remains chaotic. Inner chaos creates outer chaos, but inner discipline creates outer stability. So the next time life pressures you, pause. Do not react instantly. Observe yourself carefully. Watch your emotions without obeying them immediately. That pause changes everything. Because inside that pause, your power returns. That is where discipline lives. That is where emotional maturity begins. And that is where mentally strong people separate themselves from emotionally reactive people. Most people panic under pressure. You must train yourself to become calmer under pressure. Most people lose control when life becomes uncomfortable. You must train yourself to remain centered anyway, because calmness under pressure is rare, and rare qualities create powerful lives. So stop asking, how do I avoid pressure? Instead ask, how do I become stronger under pressure? That question changes everything, Because pressure is not always your enemy. Sometimes pressure is training. Sometimes pressure is preparation. Sometimes pressure is revealing the version of yourself that still needs discipline. Do not fear pressure. Train through it. Grow through it. Master yourself through it. Because eventually, life stops controlling the person who learns how to stay calm inside chaos. And that is true emotional strength. Chapter 4. Stop taking everything personally. One of the biggest reasons people suffer emotionally is because they take everything personally. Every comment feels like an attack. Every disagreement feels like disrespect. Every rejection feels like proof they are not enough. And because of that, their emotions stay unstable. But emotionally disciplined people understand something powerful. Most things are not about you. Read that again carefully. Most things are not about you. People project their stress onto others, their insecurity onto others, their frustration onto others, their pain onto others. And emotionally reactive people absorb all of it personally. That is dangerous. Because if you personalize everything, you will spend your entire life emotionally exhausted. One negative opinion ruins your mood. One rude person ruins your day. One rejection destroys your confidence. That is not strength. That is emotional dependency. Mentally strong people see human behavior differently. They understand that people often act based on their own internal struggles. An angry person usually carries inner chaos. A disrespectful person usually lacks inner peace. A toxic person usually suffers internally. Their behavior reflects them more than it reflects you. Their behavior reflects them, not you. That mindset creates emotional freedom. Because once you stop personalizing every negative interaction, you stop carrying emotional weight that never belonged to you. And that changes your entire mental state. Most emotional reactions are driven by ego. The ego constantly wants protection, validation, recognition, importance. That is why people become offended so easily. Their ego feels threatened. Someone disagrees with them. The ego reacts emotionally. Someone criticizes them. The ego demands defense immediately. Someone ignores them. The ego feels rejected. And suddenly, their peace disappears. All because their identity depends too heavily on outside reactions. But emotionally disciplined people understand something important. A strong mind does not need constant defense. Not every criticism requires a response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Sometimes people will misunderstand you. Let them. Sometimes people will judge you unfairly. Let them. Sometimes people will dislike you for reasons that have nothing to do with reality. Let them. Because trying to control everyone's opinion about you is emotional torture. It never ends. No matter how successful you become, someone will criticize you. No matter how disciplined you become, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how kind you become, someone will still find reasons to dislike you. That is human nature. And emotional maturity begins when you stop fighting reality. The truth is, people see life through their own emotions, beliefs, insecurities, and experiences, which means many opinions about you are not objective at all. They are projections. That realization gives you emotional distance, and emotional distance creates clarity. Distance creates perspective. When emotions take over, perspective disappears. Everything feels bigger than it really is. A small problem feels massive. A temporary setback feels permanent. A simple disagreement feels deeply personal. That is what emotional thinking does. It distorts reality. But when you step back emotionally, you start seeing clearly again. You realize not every battle matters. Not every opinion matters. Not every emotional reaction is necessary. And suddenly, your mind becomes lighter. This is why emotionally strong people rarely react immediately. They understand emotions can lie. Anger exaggerates problems. Fear exaggerates danger. Insecurity exaggerates rejection. But calm reflection reveals truth. That is why emotional discipline requires patience. When something triggers you emotionally, pause. Do not immediately assume the worst. Do not immediately defend yourself. Do not immediately react emotionally. Step back first. Observe the situation clearly. Ask yourself, am I reacting to reality or to my ego? That question alone can prevent countless emotional mistakes, because many emotional reactions are not caused by actual danger. They are caused by wounded pride. And wounded pride destroys peace faster than almost anything else. People ruin relationships because of ego, lose opportunities because of ego, create unnecessary conflict because of ego, all because they could not emotionally detach long enough to think clearly. But emotionally disciplined people train themselves differently. They stop needing constant validation. They stop needing constant agreement. They stop needing to win every argument. Because they realize peace is more valuable than ego battles. Peace is power. Read that again. Peace is power. And protecting your peace sometimes means refusing to personalize negativity. Not every rude person deserves access to your emotions. Not every criticism deserves mental space inside your mind. Not every rejection deserves emotional suffering. Sometimes life simply redirects you. Sometimes people leave because they are not meant for your future. Sometimes rejection protects you from the wrong path. But emotionally reactive people cannot see that clearly because emotions cloud judgment. That is why emotional distance matters. Distance helps you think rationally. Distance helps you stay calm. Distance protects your mental clarity, and clarity changes decisions. The strongest people are not those who never feel hurt. They are the people who refuse to let temporary emotions control permanent behavior. That is real strength. Not pretending to be emotionless, but remaining disciplined despite emotions. So from this point forward, stop taking everything personally. Not every opinion deserves emotional attention. Not every rejection defines your worth. Not every negative experience is an attack against you. Sometimes people are simply projecting their own pain. Do not carry emotional burdens that belong to others. Protect your peace instead, because the calmer your mind becomes, the clearer your life becomes. And the clearer your life becomes, the stronger you become emotionally. Chapter 5. Become emotionally unshakable. At some point in life, you must make a decision. Will you continue living emotionally reactive, or will you finally become emotionally disciplined? Because the truth is simple. Your future depends on the condition of your mind, not just your talent, not just your intelligence, not just your goals. Your mind. Because an undisciplined mind destroys opportunities. An emotional mind creates chaos. A reactive mind struggles to build peace. But a disciplined mind changes everything. That is why emotional mastery is not optional. It is necessary, especially in a world designed to distract you, trigger you, and emotionally exhaust you every single day. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to problems, reacting to criticism, reacting to stress, reacting to social media, reacting to fear, reacting to other people's opinions. And because of that, they never develop inner stability. Their emotions constantly rise and fall, depending on external circumstances. That is emotional weakness. Emotionally unshakable people live differently. They build inner control first, because they understand something powerful. You cannot control everything happening around you, but you can control yourself. And self-control changes everything. When your mind obeys you, your life improves. When your emotions obey you, your decisions improve. When your reactions become disciplined, your peace returns. That is the real goal, not perfection. Control. Because emotionally strong people still feel anger, still feel sadness, still feel disappointment. But they refuse to become controlled by those emotions. That is the difference. Weak minds obey emotion instantly. Strong minds observe emotion first. Feel everything. Control everything. That must become your mindset moving forward. Because emotional discipline is built daily, not once. Daily. Every moment becomes training. Every stressful situation becomes training. Every disagreement becomes training. Every moment of frustration becomes training. Life constantly gives you opportunities to strengthen emotional control. Most people waste those opportunities by reacting impulsively. But disciplined people use them to become stronger. That is why emotionally unshakable people protect their routines carefully. Because routines shape the mind. A chaotic lifestyle creates a chaotic mind. But disciplined habits create mental stability. Silence matters. Reflection matters. Exercise matters. Sleep matters. Focus matters. Everything affecting your mind affects your emotional strength. That is why mentally disciplined people avoid unnecessary chaos. They avoid constant drama. They avoid toxic environments. They avoid energy-draining people. Not because they are weak, because they understand peace is valuable. Peace is power. And protecting your peace requires boundaries. Some people lose peace because they never learned how to say no. They tolerate disrespect. They entertain negativity. They allow emotional chaos into their lives constantly, and then wonder why their mind feels exhausted. Your environment affects your emotions. Your habits affect your emotions. Your thoughts affect your emotions. Everything matters. That is why emotional discipline must become intentional. You cannot build a peaceful life while feeding your mind chaos every day. Impossible. The strongest people are extremely careful about what they consume mentally. What they watch, what they listen to, who they spend time around, what they allow into their minds repeatedly. Because repeated exposure shapes emotional habits. Negative input creates negative thinking. Chaotic input creates emotional instability. Disciplined input creates emotional control. Your mind becomes whatever you feed it consistently. Never forget that. And understand something very important. Being emotionally unshakable does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming stable. There is a difference. Cold people disconnect from emotion completely. Emotionally disciplined people simply refuse to drown inside emotion. They still care, still love, still feel deeply. But they remain centered. That is strength. Because true strength is not emotional suppression. It is emotional mastery. The ability to feel emotion without losing control. That is rare. And rare qualities create extraordinary lives. Most people are controlled externally, by trends, by opinions, by pressure, by fear, by validation. But emotionally unshakable people develop internal authority. Their peace comes from within. Their confidence comes from within. Their discipline comes from within. That makes them difficult to manipulate. And in today's world, that is a superpower. Because modern society profits from emotional weakness. Fear sells. Outrage sells. Attention addiction sells. But calm people cannot be controlled easily. That is why emotional discipline is freedom. The calmer your mind becomes, the less power the world has over you. Read that again carefully. The calmer your mind becomes, the less power the world has over you. That is what emotional mastery truly gives you. Freedom. Freedom from impulsive reactions. Freedom from emotional chaos. Freedom from needing constant approval. Freedom from overthinking every small thing. And freedom changes everything. Because once your inner world becomes stable, your outer life starts changing too. Your decisions improve. Your relationships improve. Your focus improves. Your confidence improves. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you become stronger internally. That is the transformation. And it starts with one decision: to stop reacting impulsively to everything around you. So starting today, watch your emotions carefully, not with shame, with awareness. Observe what triggers you. Observe what steals your peace. Observe what controls your reactions. Then slowly begin taking your power back. Pause before reacting. Breathe before speaking. Think before responding. Again and again. Until calmness becomes your identity. Until discipline becomes automatic. Until chaos no longer controls your inner state. Because eventually, the person who masters their emotions becomes unstoppable. Not loud, not aggressive, not emotional, just deeply controlled, deeply disciplined, deeply powerful. And that is the person you must become. Your life changes the moment you stop reacting to everything. Because most people never learn this lesson. They let strangers control their emotions. They let stress control their decisions. They let anger control their behavior. They let temporary feelings destroy permanent opportunities. And then they wonder why their mind feels exhausted, why their peace disappears, why their confidence feels unstable, why life constantly feels chaotic. But the truth is simple. An uncontrolled mind creates an uncontrolled life. That is why emotional discipline changes everything. The moment you stop reacting impulsively, you start thinking clearly. The moment you stop seeking validation, you start respecting yourself. The moment you stop allowing every opinion to affect you, you take your power back. That is real strength. Not loudness, not aggression, not pretending to be fearless. Control. The ability to stay calm while life becomes difficult. The ability to stay disciplined while emotions rise. The ability to protect your peace in a world addicted to chaos. That is rare. And rare qualities create powerful people. So from this moment forward, stop giving your emotions away so easily. Pause before reacting. Observe before speaking. Think before responding. Protect your energy. Protect your focus. Protect your peace. Because every reaction shapes your future. And remember this: the calmest person in the room is usually the strongest person in the room. Not because they feel less emotion, but because they mastered themselves. Now the question is no longer, can you control your emotions? The real question is, will you finally become disciplined enough to try? Starting today, practice silence, practice patience, practice control, again and again, until emotional discipline becomes your identity. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their life.